Hello, Internet! It's time for another Wednesday serial. This time I wanted to talk about Green Hornet, specifically Green Hornet Parallel Lives, but delve into some other bits too. So, the first thing about Green Hornet Parallel Lives is that it's supposedly a prequel to the movie, which I didn't really see for the way the characters play on the movie versus to how they're actually well written in this comic. What's also interesting is, with Dynamite having all these Green Hornet books, I figured that there was going to be a general continuity, and from what I can understand, there actually isn't so much. Like, I'm sure there is somewhere, but Kevin Smith seems to be a deviation from everything else, because his Kato is the female, and I know it's supposed to be later, but that means it can't be part of the movie continuity, because those are the same generation of those characters, and one's male, one's female, and one's written alright and one isn't, and so clearly those don't mix. These parallel live characters are supposed to be the prequel to the movie, and the understanding of those characters don't fit what I understand to fit in with anything else. Maybe it does again, but I don't know of that. And then Green Hornet Year 1 even seems to play in earlier, but I don't know exactly which generation of Green Hornet Year 1 that was supposed to fall on, actually. So it doesn't seem to line up with the radio shows or the new movie or any of that, so it's kind of confusing to where every book falls in, but everything follows a baseline of there's the newspaper mogul's son who goes out to learn about the world and somehow meets up with Kato, and then they try to fight crime, but they end up fighting it guised as crime bosses with elaborate disguises themselves, in a way kind of being a Batman-esque superhero, but in other ways not, and having their own unique flavor, which makes it work and makes this whole new grand empire around the Green Hornet work for Dynamite, though even Dynamite admitted last year they overextended that license and they're cutting back, but they want to continue forward with it. So the big title, and the one that most people are most likely to have read, is the Kevin Smith's Green Hornet book, which was supposed to be the movie script, but they turned it into a comic. It's actually pretty decent. The art on it's incredible. And it just really follows one narrative all the way through. And it's a pretty well done tell, but it's not even all collected in one trade. And yeah, it's good, but it just hits that, like, rock hard story and doesn't give you a lot much else. I mean, damn good comic, but it's not going to be some noteworthy artistic bit of the year, which is fine, whatever. And then you have Green Hornet Year 1, which is more Matt Wagner's bit with different kind of art that I felt didn't quite fully fit at times, though it did change up, so it's not like what you see in Detective Comics or the current Black Panther Man of Fear, where you have that weird not monochrome, but that limited color feel in the book. That's held throughout, but then it also reverts to a coloring that's more of a normal coloring, though still a bit sketchy art. And for that, I really appreciate it, because if you're going to have that kind of style at certain points to play up certain drama or action or, you know, backroom politics, that's great, but it needs to be varied. Otherwise, it just makes the book hard to muddle through, and there's supposed to be a bit more of a humorous point. That artistic style kills it, and the Year 1 book does do that. But overall, the Green Hornet part of Year 1 was alright. It was interesting, but it did prove again that Kato is the more dynamic character, and the few pages that focused on him were far more engaging. That brings us to Green Hornet Parallel Lives. That's Jai Nitz's writing. That is amazing. It's basically a book about Kato. There's bits with Green Hornet in it, but really 90% of this book is on Kato. And it's well told, there's a lot of humor, there's great action, but beyond anything else, it developed this character of Kato to the point where now he's one of the fictional badasses that I'd actually think of first in a fight or something like that. Just the way he was written was brought to such a level that it expanded the whole universe for it. Like, now if I see there's a book that Jai Nitz is writing with Kato on it, I'm gonna go get it, because it was just that phenomenal, and I know if I pick it up, it won't be a bad read. Now, I don't want to go through the whole book, but one of the most amazing things Jai does with this book is he takes the idea that Kato is an inventor, and he starts off there and does some amazing things and has a small-scale story about him being an inventor and getting bullied and how he has to get around that, which is really ingenious. Then you see where his version of Kato's fighting comes in, and the way Kato views it and the way it's written is that as an inventor, instead of learning a martial arts, he invented his own style of fighting that this one instructor kind of led him to by having him watch a bunch of old martial arts films, which was interesting. In one way, it was kind of paying an homage to the fact that, I mean, Kato for the longest time really just was Bruce Lee, and it was inseparable. But now you have such a far deviation of that, because Bruce Lee and that Kato was a martial artist, I mean, and that's what that was about. But I mean, now to have this whole inventor angle and then to play it like he wasn't really a martial artist, he's just a fighter for that and does all this other mechanical stuff, and that's where he's coming from, which brings in the fights and how he goes about things to a whole nother level and forces you to think about it differently. So when he gets into a fight and you see the moves that he makes, it makes you kind of consider where that's coming from, which is just such a brilliant thing to do. Because I mean, yeah, there's high action in all these comics, but if you can have a character that makes you spin that whole idea and makes you analyze the fight sequences for how he's going about it, that's amazing. That's such great writing for comics that I can't imagine working in any other medium really, except possibly a movie. Even then, it doesn't let you like freeze frame on it, so you can't enjoy it and savor the flavor as much. And it's just such a great moment and such a great way to like build the rest of the book. The other thing that he has is he has the Green Hornet's past actions kind of play in and actually ruin a lot of different parts of Kato's life along the way, but Kato didn't know it at the time, but by the end of the book you get a feeling that he kind of caught on to the fact that this was happening, but it's never really discussed, at least yet. That could be an interesting little story thread later, though it's mostly humor. It's actually really funny in a really great way. The other great thing is this trade that I read was 5 comics, and reading it all at once was great, but issue to issue you could have picked this up like almost any issue and just read through it and had a great story, because it was all self-contained. But I mean, the build of it wasn't really so much a thread. I mean, it was Kato's life throughout, so that is a thread in and of itself, but I mean, you could have pulled any of these chapters and it would have been just as good of a story, and you do get a little bit more for reading and all, but it's all so good it doesn't even matter. Almost like Cowboy Bebop, if you will. I'm sure all familiar with that. So yeah, I just read this amazing trade today, and I just wanted to share with you all, especially because these Green Hornet comics seem to have lost as much press, and I felt like, you know, it's worth talking about. So hopefully you'll go out and you'll check out the Parallel Lives trade. And I also know that Giant Knits is writing Kato Origins, and that's on its 8th issue, I believe, and I'll be checking that out soon. My comic shop was sold out of the early stuff, but I'm sure there's a trade or a trade on the way, so I'll be checking that out eventually. And if there's anything noteworthy that I could really say beyond this review, I'll hit you back with it. But either way, keep subscribed, like, whatever, and I'll hit you soon with another comic review. Peace, love, and a pint!